All right.
Should I put my bonnet on?
Looking nice.
I won't wear it the whole time.
Oh, I don't have any bonnets, but I wish I did.
I know, it's fun. This one was made for me when I was in the 6th grade, so 1976. So it doesn't really fit very well. But hi, Cheryl. All right, so I guess we are live. Hello, everyone. I was trying to decide whether I want to wear my bonnet or not, and I'll probably wear it for a few minutes, and then it'll get too warm, and we'll take it off. So people are getting here. I'm gonna have to put my glasses on so that I can read the comments. Oh, Cheryl says she's got her coffee and she's ready to talk. Excellent. And Cheryl says, hi, Naomi.
Hello.
Bobby's here. Awesome. Very cool. All right, everybody. We'll just kind of hang out for a minute and let, I'm going to take that off. I might put it back on later just for fun. But let's let a couple people get here, and before we do too much, I want to try to keep this to pretty close to an hour, just because I was just telling Naomi that I'm here by myself with my daughter, and she's in the other room, and in case she has a seizure or something and I have to go, then Naomi will carry things. But my husband will be home probably in just about an hour, and so I hate to be back in here in the other room when he gets home. So I will trying to figure out where I am with the camera. Okay, there we go. So we'll try to wrap it up pretty close to an hour. That would think you do love the bonnet. I can't make it look right. I did wear it, in my announcement videos. It I don't know. It doesn't want to lay just right. My mom made this for me when I was in the 6th grade, so it's made for a smaller head. But
well, bonnets can stretch. That's the best part about them.
Well, it's made there we go. It's made from like just cotton, so it doesn't really give too much. But anyway, yeah. The reason she even made this for me, I have a matching dress that goes with it, a Prairie dress. It was 1976, so she made it red, white, and blue, and I needed it for our community homecoming because I was running for homecoming princess, which was just a race to see who could raise the most money. It wasn't like a pageant or anything like that. And so I won because I've always been the sales girl, and I had to sell a lot of raffle tickets. And so I got to ride on a float. And so my mom made this red, white, and blue dress for me with the bonnet because Little House on the Prairie was all the rage in 1976. And it just seemed to fit. And so I wore this for my community homecoming, which was in the summer. So it's long sleeve with a bonnet. So I kind of got a little bit of an experience about what these ladies had to go through wearing bonnets in the summer. Of course, I guess it did go a long way to taking the sun, shading their face from the sun. My mom was born in 1926. And she wore bonnets like this when she was younger, and she didn't like to. And she said her mother would always get after her, telling her she was going to have freckles if she didn't wear her bonnet. And so I don't know whether she did or didn't. I think she did. So let's see who else here. So Cheryl, thank you. Oh my goodness, Carm is here. Carm, I just talked about you in the live stream that well, it wasn't a live stream. I did a filming. Well, I'll tell you about it later because I don't know if I'm supposed to say. I'll tell you about it later. But anyway, I talked about you on a video that was filmed that's not going to be uploaded until like March the 6th. So anyway. All right. So let me introduce, if you don't know, our co-host, Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf. And what I asked her to do first was to just tell her experience reading Laura Ingalls Wilder books for the first time, or how many times she's read them, or anything she wants to tell about her experiences. And be thinking yourself, those of you who are out there watching, if you want to type in like how old you were when you first read Laura Ingalls Wilder books. Were you an adult? Were you a kid? All of that. And also, Naomi, tell them any other thing you want to say, like if you've been to any of her home sites or anything like that, or just whatever. So, and I may, if our dogs keep barking, I may have to get up and go let them in. I meant to do that before I signed on here, but hopefully they'll be okay. Can y'all hear dogs barking? They're not barking right this. You did hear?
I can't hear them.
Okay. They're not barking right this instant, but I have one who, when he's ready to come in, he will persistently bark and bark and bark until I let him in. And we've sort of trained him to do that, but at the same time, if you can't go right then, if you can't drop everything and go let the dog in, he gets aggravated. Okay, so go ahead, Naomi, and tell us anything you want to tell us.
All right. Well, my channel's Naomi's Bookshelf. I have no memory of not knowing Little House on the Prairie. I've always known Little House on the Prairie. So I must have been reading it with my mom ever since I was little. And I know like my mom was and is a massive fan of the show. Like we bought all of them on DVD. We had the whole complete set. So we were massive fans of the whole show. And then as an adult, I decided to reread the series. And I listened to them all on audio, which was so much fun, listening to Pause Fiddle and the music and all that. But when I listened to it again, I realized how many differences there were between the book and the show. And so I then picked up a nonfiction about prairie fires and called Prairie Fires by Carolyn Fraser. And I learned a lot about the making of the show in that way, not mass in detail, but still enough. And I am interested to reread Little House on the Prairie in the future because of the whole experience. I've always loved the idea of Little House on the Prairie and Laura Ingalls Wilder. There's something romantic about that strikes something homey in a child's heart, I think. So when we were in 2006, we drove across Canada. I lived in Ontario at the time, and we were driving to BC. So we drove through the States, and we actually drove through Desmet.
Awesome.
And we went to Plum Creek. We did kind of a little tour of the different things. And we took pictures. We saw a play of Little House on the Prairie. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. So I was 14 years old, and it was so cool to see the house that Pa actually built. Like the house was there. And then actually I have here some things. This is if I can put on the screen, this is a postcard of the grave sites, the tombstones of all of the family members who were there. So this is from the actual cemetery where they all were buried. So this isn't where Laura was buried, but her whole family was. So it was so cool to go visit it and see the different things and see Laura's life, how it actually was, not just in the books. And that was when I was a teenager. So lifelong love of Laura.
What age did you say you were when you first started reading them?
I don't remember not reading them or not knowing the story. So it's got to be before I remember.
Okay. Do you think your parents or your mom read them to you?
Yeah,
initially?
Yeah. We've always had Laura Ingalls Wilder in our house. Always.
Yeah. So by the time now, I apologize for missing a little bit of your story at first, because this is my first time hosting a live stream with a guest, and so I'm like reading all the stuff and like trying to make sure I know how to do things. So forgive me. But now, of course, I grew up in the 70s, and you're way younger than me. So how did you find the TV show? I know it's always been on in reruns somewhere, but like when I was I think it came on in 1974, and I was in the 5th grade. And so I remember it, first run on television when we would have to wait, every week to get a new episode. And so how did you find it? Like, was it on reruns somewhere? Well, obviously it was, but like, what are your memories?
We somehow got our hands on copies of it, or we watched it before. And then at one point my mom found basically someone had made copies of all of the DVDs and then sold them. So we bought us like almost a pirated version of Little House on the Prairie, the complete show. So we had that for quite a long time. And then of course, as soon as we got that, we watched it all in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. I have at least 3 seasons of the show, that were given to me as gifts. I think my brother gave them to me, and I'm still not sure if I have sat down and ever watched like from beginning to end of those. But I mean, I saw them all as a kid, and I've watched them in reruns. In fact, kind of I'm almost ashamed to say, but I was on 9/11, the morning of 9/11. My oldest, who's 19 now, she was 4 months old. And I was sitting in front of the TV feeding her, and we were watching a rerun of Little House on the Prairie when 9/11 happened. And, because I didn't usually watch the news that much. And a friend called me who had been visiting Florida, and they were at the airport that morning when it hit. So they had to rent a car and drive home. But she called me because I had just seen her the day before. And she's like, Elizabeth, what are you doing? I'm like, watching Little House on the Prairie. And she goes, turn on the news, and I'm like, and then everything. So I will always remember, because, people will think, what were you doing when you heard about 9/11? Well, I was watching Little House on the Prairie, of all things. So yeah, I will always have that as a memory. But anyway, go ahead and finish. Anything else you want to say?
That was kind of about it. I mean, I've always loved Little House, and that kind of sparked my love of historical fiction when I was a kid too. Okay, so yeah. I definitely loved that era and reading about anything like that. So that is kind of my story with Little House on the Prairie.
Do you read other pioneer era stories too?
I used to, and I read a lot of like my or Dear Canada, which had some of those pioneer stories or traveling stories, traveling west or whatever, those kind of things. And then we also, when I was younger, we went to Disneyland, and from Vancouver, so we drove down, and as we drove down, we went through the Oregon Trail. So we went and stopped by, and so we saw all the pioneer memorabilia and museums, and so those are all kind of a part of my thinking of Little House on the Prairie connection. Yeah. My first real experience with that.
Absolutely. To this day, I think it's probably still my favorite era to read about. When I was in my 20s, someone introduced me to Jeanette Oke, who writes Canadian historical fiction about like pioneers going west in Canada.
Love her.
And have you read those?
Oh yeah, love her. Love almost all of her books I've read.
Yeah, I have not read the Women of the West, which are like standalones. But I have read, I think I've read all of her series books. So she's, you can probably hear a cat. I was worried that dogs were going to be loud, but now I have a loud cat. But I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I love that era. And if I'm going to read romances, I would rather read pioneer historical fiction, right around 1880s, that time frame is what I love. So I haven't been keeping up with the comments. Let me see here. Oh goodness, let's see. A lot of people are here. I didn't even know how to tell how many are here, but thank you guys so much for commenting. So Leo Bascarius says Little House on the Prairie TV series. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Because to me, it's all kind of tied together. I started reading the books about the time the show came out. Whenever sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. So Megan, the story girl, says, bonnets definitely help with sunburns, but they're a pain since they block your peripheral vision. Yeah, absolutely. Laura complained about that in Little House on the Prairie. Yeah, I think she sure did. That's awesome. So Cheryl says she read most of the original series, Little House on the Prairie, when she was an adult. So, and for this readathon. So, and you started the Martha series. That's awesome. Only read it halfway through. Okay, cool. I still have the first Martha book checked out from the library. Because I had thought that I might read it. It's here. Little House in the Highlands, which is set in Scotland. So let's see who else. Hi, Donna. Hi, Kim. Oh, Kim's Book Life. Hi there. She has a new channel. Y'all should go check out her channel. And Cheryl, definitely. Cheryl's been on. She does some knitting and all kinds of crafts and stuff. Be sure to check out her channel. Bobby Sue, you can follow on Instagram. You don't have a channel, do you, Bobby Sue? She says, I didn't read the books till you were an adult. Okay, grew up watching the reruns of the show. Awesome. You feel like Laura and the Ingalls and the Prairie were a part of your life. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and here's Colleen. She said she didn't care much for the show because she knew there was no Albert or Adam. That's true.
Very different, isn't it?
Mary, I don't think ever got married. I remember learning
No.
that and thinking, oh, well, that's sad. Love Comes Softly movies got you into Jeanette Oak. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Those are great. So, yeah, I had a coworker in my 20s, my first job out of college. I moved to Florida and I had a coworker who started reading those. I think they hadn't been out very long. So it was way before the movies. And she said, I'm reading this book about this pioneer couple and he gets killed. And so, and all this happens like really early on. You know, he gets killed. And then this man that comes to help him has a little girl and they get married and they don't even know each other. And I'm like, okay, well, where's the book? Let me read it. So then I read the whole series and have just loved everything Jeanette Oak ever wrote. So, but that's a whole nother thing. I will, if y'all are interested in a video about Jeanette Oak, I am going to try to binge on some of her books that I haven't read and maybe reread a few. And then later in the year, we'll do some stuff. Yes. So Donna from Studio in the Library says that Little House and the Waltons were her mother's two favorite TV series of all time. I would definitely say that that's probably true of me too, at least my childhood. I loved watching both of those for sure. Okay. So just to kind of give a nutshell of my history, and I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version, but I did a playlist of all my last year's videos. And I think I talked pretty extensively about kind of my history with Laura. I remember, I guess when the show came out, my mom saw that it was going to be a good, wholesome show that I could watch. And she's like, oh, there's books about those because they had been out, a long time prior to that. I don't even remember what year the first one came out. And so she would have to go every year because she was a school teacher. My mom and dad both are school teachers. And she would go to a teacher conference in August of every year at a university, which is where we all ended up going, Oklahoma State University. And she would go to the college bookstore and they had the books there. So she bought me the first one or two and brought them home and we started reading them and it just went from there. Every year she would bring me, a couple more. And eventually when I was so hooked, we would go because we had a college that was just 20 miles from where I lived. And we would go to their college bookstore and find them there because I'm from a really small rural area in Oklahoma. So, if there were any bookstores to be had, they had to be around a college because that was the only place that where there were bookstores anywhere in a reasonable distance. So she brought me those and I just loved them and loved the show. And of course, as I was reading the books while the show was airing, when I got to the part where I'm like, Mom, the show, they just stay at Walnut Grove, but in the books, they go all kinds of places. She's like, I know, sometimes they do that in shows. They can change things around and it's fine, so don't worry about it. Just enjoy the books. And it was probably when I was in college that we went on a trip with my brother and his wife, because he was 12 years older than me. He had to go somewhere to some kind of a convention or something, and he let Mom and I tag along because wherever it was that he needed to go was close enough to Mansfield and Branson, Missouri, and all of that we went to Mansfield for the first time. So that would have been in the 80s, probably late, because I was still in college, I think. So late 80s, and then later in the late 90s, my husband and I went to a convention for me because I used to be a creative memories consultant. And so we went to Minnesota and we just kind of drove across from Minneapolis. And I said, let's just, we got some time. Let's just go and head west. And we went to, what's the name of the place? I think we went to Mankato, New Ulm. There's some stuff and some interesting things and that are mentioned in the book, but not the show. We went on across and found Walnut Grove and went to the dugout site, Plum Creek, and then went to DeSmet. And we didn't get to see the show though. So I'm so jealous that you got to see the play that they do there seasonally. It was before or after, whatever. I think it was after that. I don't know when they do it exactly. I would love to go back and do that.
We were there in the heat of summer, so it was so hot.
Oh gosh. So then we went on and kept going ultimately to Mount Rushmore. And I knew that there were some ties that Carrie, her sister Carrie, had gone on to Mount Rushmore and married there. And we went right during Sturgis, which I didn't know what that was. The big giant motorcycle get together. And so there were motorcycles everywhere. We could hardly find a parking place. And finally we kind of went off a side street and there was a library. And I said, oh, let's go there and just see if they know anything about Carrie Ingalls or where she lived or whatever. And it was so awesome because they had a full display there about Carrie Ingalls and her family. And the lady who was there had met her because she said that her and her husband, when they were younger, owned a store where Carrie and her husband had traded. And I think they didn't have any children of their own, or she didn't, but she had a step granddaughter who still volunteered at that library. She just wasn't there that day. So I was like, came so close to getting to, meet somebody who had actually met, at least one of the Ingalls. And so that was fun. Then later in 2004 or 2003, my mom and my sister and I went to Mansfield. It was my sister's first time there, and she wasn't as big of a fan as the rest of us, as my mom and I. So that was my mom and myself. It was our second time to Mansfield. And then the next year we were in Oklahoma for a wedding, and we were in Oklahoma City, and it's not that far to go to Independence from there. So we went to Independence, Kansas, and got to see the site of the Little House on the Prairie. And they had the actual cabin is not still there. And they had a rebuilt one. And then I read somewhere, because that was 17 years ago. And I've read now that one got maybe ruined in a storm, and they've had to rebuild it since then. So even the one we saw is not still there as far as I know. So, all right, let me catch up with. So Bobby Sue says she's on the third book in the Martha years. Oh, I'm glad that they're good. Kim says she wants to go to Mansfield. Oh, you live in St. Louis. Yeah, you're not that far. I hope you get to go. Debbie Faust says she went to De Smet a few years back. That's awesome. There is so much there. Like Naomi was showing the picture of the grave sites. There's the house where they lived during Little Town on the Prairie, and the cottonwood trees that are outside. I guess that was where the long winter took place.
I think so. I can't remember now.
Let me just tell you, I have to admit to you guys. Okay, so I read the books when I was a kid, and I have only reread maybe the first 4 as an adult. So the ones farther in the series, I've only read like once as a kid, and it's a little muddled because I'm 56 or 57. I don't even know how old I am, but it was a long time ago. And so forgive me if I get some of the details wrong, and y'all can feel free to correct me. So, thank you, Megan. Yeah, it was fun. I was like, I think we were there on a Tuesday, and they said, oh, she's only here on Wednesdays or something like that. I was like, oh, doggone it. Let's see. Cheryl says her dream is to go to literary historical sites like the Little House sites. Yeah. Oh, and I would love to go to PEI. Have you ever been there, Naomi?
Yeah. Actually, Megan and I, because we're cousins, we went on a trip there to the Maritimes, and we got to do all the Anna Green Gable things.
This Megan wonderful. Right here is your cousin?
Yeah, Megan, the story girl, we're cousins. So
awesome. So is the story girl your channel name? Is that an ode to?
That's an ode to Anna, not to Anna Green Gables, but to Lucy Maud Montgomery. Right, Meg?
Nice. Do you have a channel, Megan?
Yes, she does.
Oh, well, we've got to check it out then. Absolutely. Everyone go check it out. And that's a whole nother thing. I'm a huge fangirl of everything Lucy Maud Montgomery. I don't know if you can see the books from here and I have some hardcover, some old ones here. Golden Road, that's a Canadian first edition that our former librarian who's retired now, she used to love to go to estate sales, and she found that for me for $1, and some Anna Green Gables dolls, 2 that were just alike that she got for my girls. So it was so sweet. I don't know how to, I always feel bad. Like if I'm watching a live show and somebody has my comment up there and it's no longer relevant and it stays there, I don't know how to like take it off. It's fine though to have that there. But then I always like, oh, why are they leaving my comment up there? It's because maybe there's no way to like make it blank. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, so my history with the books is I've only reread the first 4 and I should reread them for sure. And but yeah, so I'm kind of skipping ahead, but we talked about the Martha years. And while I'm thinking about it, Naomi and I have talked about that we would love to lead a read along. It would take over a year probably to read through everything, the Martha years, the Caroline years, Martha, then Charlotte, then Caroline, and everything. And these are out of print. So we will, I'll put in the description below. If you haven't already, we want to encourage you to write or send an email to HarperCollins, publicity@harpercollins.com, to just request that, if nothing else, please would they just publish them on ebook so that at least we could get them that way, because they're out of print. Now, I did check the Little House bookstore, which is closed right now, the one in Mansfield, and they have a mail order site where I think you can mail order year round. And they do have the Rose books, these right here. I own these. We bought these in Mansfield when my mom and I went the second time. And in fact, I didn't even realize it, but my copy of Young Pioneers has the Mansfield sticker on it. So this was my mom's copy she bought when we were in Mansfield, and she kept it. And then later on when she died, I brought it home and forgot that that's where it had even come from. I have the Let the Hurricane Roar, which came from a library book sale. But yeah, this was my mom's. Okay, so I've lost track of my outline. But anyway, so for sure, send an email and please ask them to do it, to republish. I mean, I would love it if they just started reappearing in print. That would be great. But, they might balk at that a little bit. So at least let them know that, if they would just put them on ebook so that we could at least read them, then that would be great. So let's talk about Young Pioneers. If you read this, just type in that you read it, or if you've read it in the past, or if you just reread it or whatever. This is by Rose Wilder Lane. And it is the same book as Let the Hurricane Roar, but the main characters' names were changed. Now, I kind of speculate why, I think, and we can chat about that. But let me first just hear from you guys in the comments. What did you rate it? Would you rate it? I have to confess again, I finally just finished this morning. I've been reading on it all week and finally got it done this morning. And I don't know, I might rate it 4 stars. I don't know. What do you guys think? Did you read it, and what would you rate it? Anybody?
I definitely enjoyed it.
You first.
I think it was really good. I'm hearing double of myself. Is that okay? Okay.
Anyway, you might have to mute. Or do you have it open on your channel? You might have to just mute that if you're hearing.
I don't have it open.
Okay. Oh. I'm just hearing single of you.
Okay, great. So no, I definitely rated it 4 stars when I first read it, because I've only read it once, but I really enjoyed it. And I thought that the pacing was really good and it was really easy to read. And then I read the beginning of Pioneer Girl, which we can talk about in a bit. But I realized that she stole so much of it. So I was like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have rated it so high. So I did really like it, and I thought it was really well crafted. And I thought it was nice and short, but also very, very important. So I enjoyed a lot of it.
And so have you rated it on Goodreads? And if so, what?
I rated it 4 stars on Goodreads, and then I started reading Pioneer Girl after the fact. So I might just leave it there because it was a well-written book.
Okay. So you read this first,
Yes.
And then Pioneer Girl. Okay. And I have yet to read Pioneer Girl. I have it here. But what I've been reading is Prairie Fires, which I have some thoughts on too. So you guys comment in the so Cheryl says you are echoing. I don't know what to tell you because I can only hear you once.
Has the echoing stopped?
I don't know. Let us know. So Bobby Sue says that she read it and liked it. 4 stars. David was kind of annoying. Kept on about his wife nursing, and it was weird. Now, see, I don't remember that about his wife nursing. I thought it was weird he would call him Little Shaver. Does that just mean like little boy? I had never heard that before, and I don't know if that's something from okay, no echo. Okay, good. So whatever you did, that's echoing is stopped. Great.
It's fixed.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting about that he called him Little Shaver. I don't remember him talking about her nursing.
He kept talking about the milk and like milk from the cow she kept talking about milk from the cow and all these things.
Okay. Maybe is that what he was referring to when he was talking about what she was eating and that she eat well and all that. Maybe that was it. And I just didn't really think about that. But well, I thought. Now, did you say, Naomi, after reading Pioneer Girl, that you said what was it? You said that you thought she stole this like from her mom's.
So the beginning of Pioneer Girl, there's about 60 pages of introduction. Okay. And in those 60 pages, it talks about how she was writing Pioneer Girl, the book first. Okay. And so she gave the manuscript to Rose to look at. And Rose took those stories and put it into a book without talking to her mother at all.
So it's probably this one.
And that's Young Pioneers. So she wrote Young Pioneers. And basically her mother found out when it was published that she had stolen stories like the grasshoppers and the long winter things. So those things were stolen from her.
And I think
without Laura's permission.
When you read, and see, I didn't realize all that. Because when you read this, you can definitely see if you've read these stories, this is a total mashup of all these different storylines that come into play from all the books. Like I was just commenting in my Goodreads group a couple of days ago how like the grasshoppers, I'm pretty sure was Kansas, and the dugout is Walnut Grove, or it's like 10 miles outside of Walnut Grove. And the long winter is DeSmet, right? Like they I'm trying to remember because I know that there was a time when they were out in the country when it was like blizzard, and then they ended up moving into town, and I'm getting it all mashed up in my head. But so I think she did for sure. It's pretty obvious, that she took her mom's stories and just kind of like put them in a thing and shook it up and then made it into her own story. So that's the reason I think that like this book, this original version, she uses the names Charles and Caroline. And so if this was published before all of these, then, years later, when they decided to republish this, they changed the names. I'm just speculating. But because already, all these millions of readers know all the stories and where they took place, that they just changed the names, and in order to kind of separate this from Laura's family. That's just what I think. I've never read, I haven't read Pioneer Girl or anything. And I don't know anything for a fact, but that's my speculation. I don't know. Would you say that that's probably a good reason?
I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I think they definitely. I hear echoing again. Sorry, I haven't had anything open. I definitely think that she took her mother's story without permission and then just tweaked it in ways that she wanted to. And then she also was like, oh, we're going to throw in a firstborn son, and we're going to do this, and we're going to have this with the neighbors. And it was like, it just wasn't authentic to the real people. So when Laura's books came out, and those were such a huge hit, that they needed to rebrand Let the Hurricanes Roar, because they could not have that be the same conflicting story.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I see. Sorry. I can't talk. So Colleen from Books in Every Room says in Dean Butler's DVD about Laura, he said that Rose made it up to Laura by going to New York and doing some research for Farmer Boy. So Colleen, I didn't realize that Rose did the research for Farmer Boy. I did not know that. I just figured that she just took Almanzo's stories and wrote them. So that's pretty cool. There is what she's talking about, Dean Butler's DVD. I think that's on YouTube. So if you don't have the DVD, you can look it up, at least in part, on YouTube, because she reminded me last year that Almanzo's name is pronounced Almanzo, not Almanzo like they did it in the show. And that was a total mistake. The actress that played Eliza Jane, she was the first one to say the name Almanzo, and she accidentally said Almanzo, and so they just had to stick with it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how many times in life do things get changed from the pilot? They could have so easily changed that and corrected it, and it stinks that they did that they didn't, stay true to how, because now everybody who grew up on the show wants to say Almanzo. Even the narrator of Prairie Fires says most of the time says Almanzo.
Well, that's how I was reading the books, and I was like, what's with this pronunciation?
Yeah,
because that's how I remember the name.
Yeah. And I remembered thinking back then it didn't make any sense because she called him Manly, and I'm like, why she call him Manly when it's Almanzo? So when we're talking about Young Pioneers, did you guys know that there is a movie? It stars, I think this is Linda Pearl. So that means this has been around a long time. It's based on the novel by Roswell Lane, and I don't know who the actor is. I'm trying to see. I should have looked that up. Anyway, I have not watched it. Yeah, Linda Pearl and Roger Kern. I found this right before Christmas at Dollar General, and I forgot to show it in a book haul. I'm trying for it to not glare. Can you guys see it? Has anybody ever seen this movie? Do you know if it's any good?
I haven't even heard of it before this week or before you talked about it.
So, yeah, check if you have Dollar General where you live. Check and see if they still have any copies. So, yeah, Laura always called him Manly. That's what Debbie said. Laura called him Manly, but I think his family called him Manny. And then when she got introduced to him, she like messed up and called him Manly, and that just stuck. So she always called him Manly. So, Debbie says we're thinking the same. Well, what are we thinking? Oh, that they could have changed it. Yeah, I don't see why.
It's such an easy thing to fix, even if it was like, oh, it's her New York accent that they could have blamed it on, but they didn't.
Right? Or, you could have said, yeah, my name is, Almanzo, but my sister just insists on making me sound, cityfied. I don't know. They wouldn't have even had to mention it. I think if they had just changed it, nobody would have ever thought anything about it. And now, years and years of people saying it incorrectly and people hearing it incorrectly, it's so much harder to change than it would have been if they would have just nipped it right then after that first episode. That's what I think. That's what I think, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so any more? What else about this? Who all read this? I didn't hear from everybody. That she called him Manly. Okay. Yes. Yeah, because he was, I guess, he was 10 years older than her. So he was definitely very manly. So this, I wanted to just talk a little bit about, and by the way, I think I made an error when I was setting this up on my Goodreads group. I was thinking there were only 3 chapters, but there were 4. There were, I know what I was going to ask you guys. And I'll ask you this first, Naomi. Do you think that, now I don't know if this really happened or not, if this is just made up, but we know from this book that David or Charles had to leave, and so he expected her to get help from the Svensons. And so then when the Svensons decided to leave, her first thought was, I'll go to town. So throughout her visit to town, do you think she should have stayed and lived with one of those options? Or do you think she was right in going back and living on her own with just the baby? And regardless of what you think she would have done, what would you have done? And I'm going to pose that to all of you guys, because I think I know what I would have done. So what would you guys have done? Would you have stayed in town with one of those undesirable situations, or would you have gone back like she did and toughed it out? What do you think?
I think my brain's just so practical. I'm a very practical person, and the cost that they were expecting from her, and that she wouldn't be able to pay it or make enough money, but then also the living places that would take her, but would be like, you need to be completely quiet. Like she was having a little baby,
Mm-hmm.
so I work in childcare, and I know that children are not quiet by any standard.
Not at all.
So I think I probably would have gone back to the farm. And even though it would have been like crazy, but she had the money to buy a lot of supplies,
Right.
and she had a good setup, like
You freeze
that
up.
worked
Oh, you're freezing up.
out.
Hang on a minute. You're freezing up. Am
And
I freezing up too?
also I do think long term at the bland. I'm still here. Um, yeah, no, I would think with the land jumpers, I would have stayed because that's their long-term goal, to be there and not have anyone
Yeah.
steal their land. So
Well,
I would
that's
have
good.
stayed.
I didn't know what you would say. I think I would have too, but maybe for different reasons, because I'm kind of a control freak. So I think I would have not wanted to subject myself to the standards of somebody else. On the other hand, she knew she was facing hard times, but $20 went a long way then. So like you said, she had plenty of money to get supplies. But while she was back there alone, I just thought, wow. I mean, well, she wasn't alone. She had her baby. But I think I would have enjoyed that so much. Not necessarily the hard work of it all, but just the cozy, if you had everything you needed to stay warm and fed, then just the having, the comfort of your own space, I think would be more ideal than having to deal with, anybody else and their drama, especially if they
Yeah.
didn't really want you to begin with. So yeah. And I always feel bad for Laura in the one time, I think it's in the little town on the prairie, where she had to go and teach, and she had to end up staying with some people who were just horrible. And I thought, man, what a horrible situation to have to be in, to just have to live with somebody that was just so awful.
Mm-hmm.
So what about some of you guys? What would you do? Is there anybody who would have stayed in town? Nobody has commented. Trying to hang on. There we go. So, Colleen says, I did one of those inflation calculator things. $20 in 1880 would be $544 now. So, yeah, I mean, still not a lot by today's standards to live and survive for that long. But if you think about, she didn't have to pay a cable bill or an electric bill or anything like that. She just needed to buy enough food and fuel, matches and all of that kind of stuff in order to survive. So thank you for doing that,
Mm-hmm.
Colleen. That's great.
And she's not even buying it for the whole winter. She's just buying it until David comes home. Because I was reading where David is the main character, along with Molly. So I think even then it's like 2 months. It's not even she needs to buy it for 6 months.
Yeah. All right. So I would love for you guys to chat more, and we'll share your comments about any experiences you have had with reading the books, or what you thought about Young Pioneers, or whether you thought she did the right thing by going and staying by herself. So what would you have done with the cow situation? I was just like, wow, that took a lot of guts. And I'm glad she didn't just like shoot them all. She did try to help them. So I don't know. I thought it worked out as well as it could have. where she killed the one, and then that way she had some meat, and then she had the smarts to think about going and getting one out of the middle, like a young one that she could handle to take back home as a cow. And then, she did what she could to help save the rest of them. She took the ice off their faces and, and let them go. So I thought it was kind of interesting that her first thought was that they were going to eat up all of her hay, because she was relying on that. I mean, that was how she was staying alive and keeping warm. So Debbie, you say at least you don't think you could have stayed. So Kim says she didn't read it, but she would have gone home to the farm. So Kim, the thing was, she had to go. She had a young baby, and it was a dugout. And she did have a barn, but she didn't have any other livelihood there. She just had enough fuel to stay alive. And she was just in this remote area where, she was facing the winter and no one was going to be there to help her. So, she did. The man who gave her a ride out there said that him and his wife would come and visit her. But then with the blizzards, they didn't brave it and try to come and see her, and we don't really know ever what happened to them. It would have been kind of interesting if we could have found out more. I think Donna in our Goodreads chat said that she would have been interested to know more, like what happened later. Of course, Donna, we know what really at least closer to what really happened by reading these. But, I think if we just look at this for what it is, it's a made up story. And then we can just speculate where they went from there. So Bobby Sue says she would definitely go back to the homestead. It was colder in town with those people. Well, yeah, figuratively, right? Colder in town with those people. So Debbie says, I loved how they lived in this dugout, and she still did household chores and kept everything neat and tidy, clean and tidy. Yeah. And when they lived on the banks of Plum Creek, I think Ma did the same thing. And I think it's neat how people with dirt floors would sweep their dirt floors. And I've read sometimes in other books where if they have like a dirt yard, they sweep their yard, which seems weird, but if it's hard packed, then you sweep the sand off and just leave the hard packed left. So, okay, Donna says she would have done exactly what she did. Okay, well, that's good. I wondered if very many people would think, when they saw her turn around and go back home, if they were like, no, don't do it. That's not good. Do you think it was realistic that she survived that? I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's possible because they were tough people. They had to be tough to survive that entire environment, whether it be summer or winter.
Right.
But also, I think she was 18, wasn't she, when she had her baby?
Or maybe 16.
Maybe 16. So she was young, and so she was physically capable of a lot. But at the same time, she had no choice. When you have no choice, you can do a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. You have sometimes you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know.
Sorry.
But I don't know. That's fine. Okay. All right. So let's talk about any other thing that anybody else read for the readathon. So do you want to talk any more about Pioneer Girl? Did you say you didn't end up finishing it yet? I know it's a lot to read. And
I am 150 pages in.
Okay. And did you say you're gonna finish reading it or no?
Yeah, I'm gonna finish it this month.
Okay. Have any of y'all seen the PBS special? I think they took information from this book and put that special together. Colleen, was it you that told me about that? Or no, it was Debbie Faust that told me about the PBS special that that just came out this year, and they interview Caroline Fraser, who wrote this, and also Sarah Miller, who wrote Caroline, and other authors like that. I thought it was good. The special I'm talking about, and I will talk about books too, but part of me, I don't know, after I'm almost done, I still got a couple hours in this. I've been listening to this on audio, so I'm not quite done. This is Well, Emily Sears from the Redhead's Reading, she was a little bit afraid that, the more she would read, the more it would make her not like Laura. And I still like Laura, but this is making me not like Rose. But I kind of always knew that Rose was, kind of tooted to her own horn, that kind of thing, marched to her own drum. And that she's definitely, Rose was definitely not Laura. She had her own set of values. And so, I don't know.
One thing I really liked about Prairie Fires when I read it last year is that it's very unbiased.
Yeah.
It just says it as it is. It doesn't pick a side. It does exactly what it says. It just talks about the people.
Right.
Good or bad.
Yeah. I liked in the beginning, this told a lot more about the Ingalls family, like Pa's side of the family, than anywhere else that I've ever read, because, there's a lot that's been written about the Quiners and Caroline's family, but not that much about Pa's family. So that was good. And of course we know a little bit about Almanzo's family too. So, that was good to have that research. Let me keep up with the comments here. Cheryl says, I want to read Pioneer Girl. I've been waiting for the library. Oh, now you're moving. Oh, shoot. So now you've got to, so you're moving far away from where you were, like to a different city. So you'll have to get signed up for your new library.
If I can recommend something about it, read it as soon as you can, because it's a lot of heavy footnotes, which are really interesting, but a lot longer reading process than you'd expect.
That's true. Did you read it in person, like in print or on audio?
I have it in print, but it's thin, small footnotes, and there's a lot of footnotes, which are very interesting. Okay. But there's a lot of them.
I am finding that even as an audiobook, it's taking a while to get through, because to just process it and digest it is tough. So, I mean, it's a lot. It's easy to read. It's easy to listen to, but I don't know. I think it's such a big book, and I think it's better in small doses. I think Emily said she was listening to this too, or reading it, and she was reading it a chapter a day, and that was enough for her. And I think that's true. Now, were you talking about Prairie Fires, or were you talking
I'm talking about Pioneer Girl in particular. Okay. If you look in it, any page, there's tons of footnotes and tons of pictures. It just is a lot of reading.
There is a lot. Yeah. And so did you have the audio of this? Because I haven't even found it on audio.
I have it just physically. It's such a big book. So I
know it is. Yeah. I haven't been able, I don't know if this is even on audio. If it is, I'd love to find it. But this one is on Hoopla on audio, and I've been listening to it. And this one I listen to on audio. So yeah. But I need to read Pioneer Girl one of these days. I will do it. So Donna says it's hard packed. Were you talking about hard packed earth? She's talking about sweeping. She went to a small Mexico town in the early 90s. The lady of the house sweeps her patio first thing every morning, and also the hard packed dirt in front of the house. Yeah, I've heard of that. It just seems so contrary to reality, but I have heard that a lot, that people do that. So, Cheryl, I don't know if Pioneer Girl is on audiobook. I have not ever seen it. Maybe if it's on Audible, that's always kind of my go-to. If I see it on audio, if I see it on Audible, then I know it's on audio. Not that I would pay for it, but yeah, if it's on Audible, then it's on audio. But if it's not on Audible, then it probably doesn't exist on audio. So
it is worth a read though, because it has tons of physically reading. It has tons of maps and pictures and handwritten notes and stuff. So it's actually worth looking at.
Okay, good. Yeah. So Debbie says, my daughter-in-law watched the PBS special. We didn't like the controversy part. If the books made some people uncomfortable, why would the person continue reading them? I got that. I did kind of think that too, Debbie. And here's my thought on this, and this is just me. I feel like sometimes, and this may not be the case, but I feel like sometimes people just want to look for a controversy in order to make something more interesting. And I'm wondering if the producers of that show were just trying to come up with something controversial. Now, I know that maybe they were just wanting to bring in the fact that her books were challenged several years ago because of racism to Native Americans. But I am Native American, and I didn't feel that, reading it. Now I'm not full blood or anything, but you know, you just have to look at it in the time that it was written and that it happened, and just understand what was happening in the world. And I'm not trying to justify racism by any means, but I mean, she was just a little girl experiencing that, and she was just telling her experiences. So I think there was a comment though that Ma made that was one thing they brought out in the show, was how I think there was one comment about there was no people there, only Indians. And yeah, okay, I get that. And that should have not been left that way. That should have been edited out. Someone should have caught that in the beginning for sure. Or it should have said there was no white people there, only Indians, or something like that. It was it was definitely a mistake that shouldn't have happened, but I don't think that was enough to ban the book. That's just my feeling on it. So Bobby Sue says Paul was kind of a wanderer. Yeah, wasn't he? He wanted to make something of himself, but yet he would get that itch after, a little while. He would have to go somewhere else. And do you think maybe he was kind of ADD? Maybe he just wanted to keep going and keep moving and find something better. And Debbie says, I agree. Yeah, he definitely was. And I think it was probably hard for him once they got to DeSmet to stay, but he did. I think he owned or ran a store, and there is a store on the street corner. We looked and looked till we finally found it, because I had read somewhere that there was a little plaque, and it's very small, but it's on the side of the building in DeSmet that says that this was the location that where there was a store that had been run by Charles Ingalls. And so you can find that if you ever happen to find yourself in DeSmet, South Dakota. Let's see, what else are we going to talk about? So any other books that anybody read? So I did, I only got, I don't know if y'all saw my vlog, but I just had kind of a reading slump at the beginning of the week. So that's why it took me all week to read this. And I have not finished this yet. So I didn't even get really started on this one. I opened it up and I read a page or two, but not even enough to put it on my currently reading list. I just couldn't get to it. And I did finally today read this with my daughter Emily this morning. So this is one of the little children's storybooks that are adapted from Laura's Little House books, and they are done. The illustrations are done by Renee Graff, and they did get Garth Williams' permission to do the illustrations in his style. It says here that this one, the text was adapted from Farmer Boy, and the illustrations are inspired by the work of Garth Brooks with his permission, which we gratefully acknowledge. So I think that's good, because it's good that they made them look like the bigger Little House books, because that helps, I think, children, younger children see these, and then later it's a good transition into the bigger books, because they're, they'll look at that and go, oh, I recognize that. Didn't I read something like that when I was a kid? Something like that. So Colleen says, all right. Well, first, let's see. Donna says, I think it's important to reread these books as they were written, to be aware of the mindset that was in that time, and to remember to provoke feelings that we can keep learning from. Yes, I completely agree. I don't think we should sugarcoat history, because we won't learn anything from it if we do. I think that's why hard-hitting books about slavery are important, because it's not that we enjoy those books, but it reminds us why we never want to go back to that again. So I definitely agree.
I think it's also really important to, when you read classics, to remember it's a classic. And I think Little House on the Prairie is a classic. So reading these books, just remember they're classics.
Yeah.
You can't look at a classic and read it. Like I've heard people who complain and read a classic, be like, wow, that's so anti-feminism. And it's like, well, this wasn't a feminist time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So we got to
Right.
really remember that when we read books like this.
Yeah. I get tickled when people read a YA or a middle grade book and they'll say, wow, that was so childish. That's who it was
That's the
written
point.
for. Okay, then they accomplished their purpose. Let's see. I'll look at my outline here. We have come up on an hour, and so I want to be conscious of that. Let's see. If there's anything else that anybody wants to talk about, we've pretty much covered everything on the outline, except that I was going to mention a couple of other books. I grabbed a couple of books from my library. Hang on. I forgot to put them here within my reach. Hang on one second. So had I been able to read as much as I wanted to, I did find some other books on audio that I am definitely interested in reading. On Scribd, I found these two. One is, and y'all tell me if you've read this, it's by Susan Wittig Albert, called A Wilder Rose. And I think this is a fictionalized story about Rose. On the back, it says, in 1928, Rose Wilder Lane, world traveler and highly paid, returned from Albania to her parents' Ozark farm and felt obligated to stay. Then came the crash. Rose's investments vanished and the magazine market dried up. That's when Rose's mother, Laura, wrote Pioneer Girl, which is this one. The rest is literary history, but not the history we thought we knew. Based on Rose's unpublished diaries and other documentary evidence, A Wilder Rose tells the surprising true story of the often strained collaboration that produced the Little House books. So this is written on the back here as if this is true, like this is a biography. And I did not know that. I thought this was a fictionalized novel. Have you read this, Naomi? Have you heard
No,
of
I haven't
this?
even heard of it.
Has anybody else that's watching ever read this, or do you know anything about it? I feel like Colleen or Donna might know something about this. Do y'all? So yeah, I checked it out from the library. This is on Scribd. If you have Scribd, you could check it out. Now this one is a total fiction book, actually, I don't know if it is. It might be actually autobiographical, or it might just be. Okay, this is called A Wilder Life, and it's about the main character. It says My Adventures in the Lost World of Little House on the Prairie by Wendy Mcclure. So actually, I don't know if she just made this up, like it's a protagonist who wanted to go and live a life like Laura Ingalls Wilder, or if somebody actually went and did it. It says it's a howlingly funny, historically thorough, and irresistibly mad trip down the rabbit hole of the Laura Ingalls Little House obsession I'm having a hard time reading it, that has consumed an entire generation of women. I spent 7 years on the prairie, and this book made me want to run out and buy a butter churn. Mandatory reading for all bonnet heads and the people who love them. That was what that quote, the whole thing I just read, is from Alison Arngrim, who's TV's Nellie Olson, which brings me to another library book I just checked out, which I will let you read the title. I'm not going to say it out loud because my mama always taught me not to say that word. But this is by Alison Arngrim. And, as I'm sure we've all seen Little House on the Prairie. And her subtitle says, How I Survived Nellie Olson and Learned to Love Being Hated. Can you imagine the hatred that she got from people, who were just mad at her, even for just playing the role? I mean, somebody had to do it. And
I heard that she got slapped multiple times for playing the role.
It's just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy that people aren't able to separate the person from a part they play. But I have not read this. Every time I've seen her interviewed, she just seems like such a fun person, and how she has really embraced her history with Nellie Olson, and she just seems like she has come out the other side a stronger person. So I just appreciate her for standing up and, you know, being able to embrace it like that. I just think that's pretty cool. So anyway, this is another one that I definitely would like to read. I checked it out knowing that I probably wouldn't get to it, but there was only one physical copy in my whole county library system, and I wanted to check it out to make sure it got circulated because I want it to still be there when I do want to read it. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and check it out, which brings me to another point. We talked about getting these on the back on the market so that we can do a read along of all of these, you know, Martha, Charlotte, Caroline books. If you find that your library has these, even if you can't read them right now, check them out. Hang on to them for a week or two before you check them back in, because libraries have to see that books are getting circulated or they won't keep them. I know our library, if a book hasn't been circulated in 3 years, they weed it out. And I don't know, I'm sure different libraries have different policies. But if your library has those and you're not ready to read it, just check it out anyway so that it gets circulated. So that's my request to you. So anyway, I will be checking out. I did check out all of these last year that I didn't already own. And I did not check out the ones that I own, which was kind of selfish of me. I should go ahead and check those out too this year, just so that they're there for other people, even though I've been trying to collect them myself so that I have them whenever I'm ready to read them. All right, what else? Anybody else want to talk about? So Bobby Sue says Nellie wasn't so bad after she got with Percival. But now Percival wasn't real either, right? Well, I don't know. Do we even know? We don't really know whatever happened with the real Nellie Olson, do we?
No, what really happened was there was a girl named Nellie Owens who she based Nellie Olson off of. Right. And then she was such a good villain that they kept her in.
Okay.
But also later on in life, or later on when they were like 10 years old, I think, there were 2 cliques going on, and both of the clique leaders wanted Laura on their group. And so eventually Laura was head of the pack because both of them were trying to get Laura. So Laura was the most popular girl in school because of that. I don't remember if Nellie was one of those girls.
Is that from the books or the TV show?
That's from Pioneer Girl. So that's her true life.
Okay.
So
I'm a fraud for doing this and not having read this. I'm so sorry, you guys. All right. I will try to make a commitment that before we do this next year, I will have read this and maybe reread these, even if it's just audio. I think these are on Hoopla on audio. So I need to go back and listen back through the things. So Adonna says, ooh, Susan Wing Albert wrote the Beatrix Potter series. Yes, I remember you reading those Beatrix Potter cottage tales of the Lake District based on Potter's life. Albert is a good historical researcher. We'll have to read this one soon. Yes. So Donna, based on that, would you guess that this is probably true? Also, I saw that Cheryl says she's going on Scribd. There are at least a couple of books by Rose on Scribd. The Henry Ford biography, which now we know from reading some of the other stuff that maybe it was not completely true and was maybe unauthorized. So, but it's still out there. So, it's interesting to read some of those things. Just know that, just because you read it, it may not be true. So Cheryl says, I might get Pioneer Girl from the library since I could take it back in the New City movie too. Oh, okay. So is it like a reciprocal borrowing at your library where you can take from one and leave it at the other? Our library, our whole county has that. Each of our towns has its own library that run their library, except for my town does not have a library. But you can use any library in the county, and like if I wanted to order something, they have a truck that goes around and picks up and drops off at every library in the county. Or I could just go to a library and check something out, and then I can return it anywhere in the county. So that's pretty cool. All right. It's in the same province, so you can leave it in the New City. Oh, perfect. That's good. All right. What else? I'm not in a big rush so far. I can't hear that the dogs are tearing up anything, or my daughter. I think she's still watching her video, and my husband's not home. I don't think he is anyway. He might have snuck in and he's being very quiet. But so I can chat a bit longer, or we can sign off. Anything else you want to share or talk about, Naomi?
No, I think it was really great to dive back into Laura's world. Since it's been a little while since I've read it, finished off the series. I think I finished it in April. So it's been a little while, and it was good to jump back in again.
So, and that was a reread, right? Did you read
Yes.
all of them as a kid and then
Yeah.
reread them later? Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
as an adult. So I finished the first 4 years in April last year.
Very cool. Have you read the other there's 2 more that are attributed to her, like On the Way Home is their story. It's her diaries from when they moved to Mansfield. Have you read this one?
I haven't, but I have it now. I own it now. I haven't read it yet. So
Awesome.
I am actually really interested to read it, since I think that one's nonfiction, not historical. And then I want to read some more of her other books, including the one about her missing years when they were
in diary form. So, and this tells, I think, their
trip.
Like, this is a map of where they went. Mm-hmm. And then I have this one, which I read as a kid. I have not reread this as an adult. West from Home is when she went to visit Rose when Rose was living in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And she left Manly at home and went on a train, I think, all the way to San Francisco in 1915. So if we ever get a chance to do the whole thing, I would say, we start with like Martha, and then Charlotte, then Caroline, then read the Laura books, reread those, then read the Rose books, but save this one to the end and read this one like the very last, because this would come after Rose is grown. So save this one.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to jump more into Laura again. So this has kind of reignited an old love of mine for Laura.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, yeah, I am going to, I definitely am going to get some more of these things read, and I need to go watch this movie too. And I'll let you know in a video how it is. And all of y'all go check your Dollar Generals and see if they have any of these left from Christmas. This is called Young Pioneers Christmas, but I'm assuming that it probably covers the whole book, because the whole book is not that long. So I'm gonna guess that. Anyway, guess I'll put my bonnet back on to sign off. Any other comments anybody wants to make? Anything else you want to say? So Colleen says, see you later. I've enjoyed this. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, everybody. Oh, Cheryl says, has anyone read the Diaries of Lucy Maud Montgomery? You'd like to do a readathon of that someday. So, okay. So Cheryl, I've got all of these short stories of Lucy Maud Montgomery. But yeah, I would love to do like a read along of some of these kind of things, where we could just explore these, but I don't know. These may be out of print too. I really don't know. There is a fairly new book of some undiscovered writings of Lucy Maud Montgomery. This just came out a year or 2 ago, called After Many Years. And these are stories that were unpublished in any of these other things. But I have not read her diaries. That's about the only thing of hers that I have not read.
I know that Lucy Maud Montgomery did diaries that she edited later in life, so she doesn't have very clear diary. So basically you don't know what's real and what's not. Okay. So her diaries she did not like, so she went back and re-edited them. So it's very unreliable narrator. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you're not supposed to edit your diaries. That sort of nullifies them, doesn't it?
I know, but she did.
That's kind of funny. All
Yeah.
right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. This was fun. Everybody who was here, even if you didn't comment, thank you so much. I don't even know where it tells how many people are watching. It says, oh, I see it now. 8 people are watching right now. I think some people have already had to leave. But thank you all so much. Thank you, Naomi, for hosting this readathon with me. And we will keep working on the publisher to try to get some of these other Martha and Charlotte books published so that we could maybe do like a whole year-long reading project, kind of like they're doing the year in Mitford. I would love for us to do, a year with Laura and a year with Little House and do all of this kind of stuff. It'll be fun. But meanwhile, we'll meet back here next year, February 7th through the 10th. Happy birthday to Debbie Faust. Her birthday is February 7th, the same as Laura's. And I guess that's it. So bye, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks, Naomi.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
All right, you're welcome. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.